As the dust refused to settle, the internet shifted from gossip to grit, digging deeper into every detail like digital archaeologists with a vendetta. Reddit threads turned into sprawling case files, timelines, spreadsheets, receipts overlaid with video footage from the Coldplay concert, multiple angles slowed to 0.025x speed, showing Andy mid-lean and Kristen brushing his hair back like they were in a movie, and not under stadium lights surrounded by 60,000 people. This wasn't just cheating. It was cinematic betrayal, and the internet was documenting it like a cultural artifact. Influencers made content, lawyers started live streams, experts weighed in on ethics, HR policy, even company governance, and the public lapped it up hungry. Not just for scandal, but for justice. Because at the core of all the chaos were three kids. Three children watching their father kiss another woman live on a jumbotron in front of the world. And in every viral edit, in every slowed down TikTok, and every Coldplay remix, that heartbreak never left the frame. This wasn't just about a CEO who fell from grace. It was about the people he took down with him, especially the family he had built his reputation on. And now, as memes spread and parody, videos surfaced, even Coldplay fans got involved. Someone made a playlist called Songs to Divorce Your Cheating CEO Husband to it, hit over 2 million followers in 3 days, featuring tracks like Irreplaceable, Before He Cheats, and yes, Fix You. And when someone commented that Fix You was now about Megan Coldplay's official account, liked it, the internet crowned her revenge royalty queen Meg, the silent slayer, the blueprint for quiet destruction, while Andy Byron became the face of corporate carelessness. The cautionary tale every HR department would whisper about for years to come, and when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the financial damage began. Astronomer stock dropped 14% in a single day. Major clients paused. Contracts citing ethical concerns, investors pulled out the homepage, which once proudly flaunted a people-first mission statement, removed it entirely, replaced with a bland holding message full of corporate nothing speak, and then came the internal chaos. Slack threads were monitored. Employees were told to keep quiet, but it was too late. Whistleblowers were already talking to the press, and according to leaked messages, Kristen Kitt had not only approved questionable promotions, but may have shared confidential employee data with Andy, private complaints, performance reviews, even personal HR files, things that could trigger not just firings, but federal investigations. And that's when the story crossed the line from embarrassing to explosive. Legal experts started speculating that this could lead to criminal charges, misuse of company funds, breach of fiduciary duty, and possible violations of data privacy laws, all tied to two executives who had once been seen as model leaders. In Silicon Valley, Andy Byron wasn't just facing a divorce, he was staring down corporate ruin. And Kristen Kitt wasn't just disappearing, she was potentially running from real consequences. And as the scandal grew, so did the pressure on Astronomer. Its board, its leadership, its staff, forced into survival mode, damage control mode as media outlets piled on, and the internet refused to let it fade. And at the center of the storm, Megan Byron stood still, silent, but very much in control. Insiders say she wasn't taking interviews because she didn't need to. The facts were speaking for themselves, and her legal team was doing the rest. Subpoenas went out for everything: company credit card statements, Slack transcripts, emails, hotel records. Andy's browsing history. Megan's team wanted to build a case not just for divorce, but for a full reckoning. They were prepared to argue emotional distress, fiduciary failure, and even seek damages on behalf of the children, citing public exposure and long-term psychological harm, especially since the video wasn't just viral. It was everywhere, from social media to national news segments. And yes, even late-night comedy shows poked fun at the CEO, who lost it all on Kiss Cam, a 3-second moment that led to $35 million in settlement negotiations and counting. And as this unfolded in real time, something shifted. The public wasn't laughing anymore. They were angry. Angry at the hypocrisy, at the misuse of power, at the arrogance. And they weren't just rooting for Megan. They were standing with her because in a world full of scandal fatigue, this one felt different. It wasn't just mess. It was meaningful. A kind of collective vindication against the unchecked entitlement that had gone unchallenged for too long. And for once, it seemed karma wasn't just coming, it was trending. As the world kept watching and the internet refused to look away, the fallout expanded beyond anything anyone had imagined. It wasn't just about Andy Byron anymore, or even Kristen Kitt, it was about Astronomer, the billion-dollar tech darling now, caught in the middle of a public relations nightmare. Investors were panicking, employees were quitting, and board members were scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal that had gone from kiss cam moment to federal investigation. Andy Byron was officially placed on indefinite leave, a corporate term that really meant they were working out the legal language to fire him without handing over a golden parachute. And inside the company, morale hit rock bottom. Employees, once proud to work for a people-first tech firm, were now walking on eggshells, waiting for the next shoe to drop, and leaks continued flooding out of the organization. Slack screenshots, anonymous emails, documents suggesting that the internal review wasn't just revealing one bad relationship, but a culture of favoritism, cronyism, and ethical corner-cutting, allegedly encouraged or ignored by the very leaders who were now in hiding. And then the lawsuits started rolling in. Former employees began coming forward with claims of toxic culture, biased promotions, and HR misconduct dating back years, fueled by Kristen's unchecked power within the department. Her name was on complaint logs that mysteriously vanished. She had allegedly dismissed concerns from junior staff who had raised flags about behavior from executives, and suddenly, this was no longer about who kissed who at a concert. This was about systemic failure and a company that had built itself on a lie. And while all of this was unraveling, Byron was doing something else. Something unexpected. She began meeting with journalists quietly off the record. No interviews, no cameras, just background calls with top reporters, shaping the narrative, ensuring the truth got out. Not from a place of revenge, but from a place of clarity, because as she told one source anonymously, people deserve to know what really happened and why it matters. She wasn't just seeking justice, she was resetting the record, and the response was staggering. The internet doubled down on its support for her tweets, turned into tributes. Instagram pages became fan accounts. Artists began sketching her likeness. Captions, reading, she didn't say a word and still destroyed them, and even fashion bloggers broke down her rebrand from high glam tech wife to power player minimalist icon. But while the internet made art, Meghan's legal team made moves. They filed court documents seeking full custody of the children, citing emotional trauma and public embarrassment caused by Andy's affair and the global nature of its exposure. They argued that his actions had not only endangered the family's privacy, but also put the kids in harm's way emotionally and socially. And legal experts agreed it wasn't far-fetched to assume a judge would side with her, especially considering how far the footage had spread and how many students in their school district had seen it and mocked it. And Andy, he was unraveling. Friends said he barely left his house, refused to speak at meetings, and was now reportedly seeking crisis counseling. Not because he felt guilt, sources claimed, but because he couldn't handle the sudden collapse of everything he had built: his image, his power, his family, his company, all gone. In what he kept calling one mistake. But as the world kept reminding him, it wasn't just one moment, it was a pattern. A history of choices that added up to disaster. And Kristen Kitt, she remained a ghost, her location unknown, her digital presence scrubbed completely. And rumor had it she was preparing for legal battles of her own, as subpoenas now included her name in investigations tied to internal communications and potential data breaches. Her role as HR director placed her at the center of decisions that could be deemed illegal, and the question now wasn't if she'd face consequences, but how severe they would be. And at Astronomer, the board finally broke its silence, issuing a vague public statement, acknowledging an internal review and reaffirming its commitment to ethical leadership, but it was too little too late. The damage was already done, because no amount of corporate jargon could erase the image of their CEO caught on camera betraying every principle the company stood for, and in the court of public opinion, they had already lost. And through it all, the internet never stopped watching, never stopped talking, because this wasn't just a scandal. It was a turning point, a live example of how the smallest spark in the most unexpected, setting a kiss cam at a Coldplay concert, could ignite a corporate firestorm that exposed everything from infidelity to financial misconduct. And still, people wanted more updates, justice, closure, maybe even redemption. But for now, all they had was silence and speculation, and the haunting realization that in a world fueled by content and receipts, no secret stays safe and no power is permanent. The final pieces of the story came into place. The internet refused to let it go. The Coldplay kiss cam that had once seemed like an isolated embarrassment was now cemented as one of the most iconic corporate meltdowns of the digital age. Entire college courses were rumored to be referencing the scandal as a case study in power ethics and Public image while TikTok creators reenacted the moment in front of green screens, mouthing Chris Martin's lyrics as they mimicked Andy's infamous duck behind the VIP railing, and Megan Byron's silence had become the loudest statement of all. Not once did she address the drama publicly. Not once did she release a single statement or go live with tears in her eyes. She simply disappeared from the brand they had built together and re-emerged as something entirely her own. People saw her not as a victim, but as a strategist, a woman who didn't just survive betrayal, she dismantled it. And now that the legal proceedings were moving forward, insiders claimed her team was building a civil case that reached far beyond divorce. They were reportedly investigating Astronomers Board for negligence, arguing that Andy's behavior had been known internally and ignored for months, maybe years, and if proven true, it could result in shareholder lawsuits, further stock depreciation, and even regulatory consequences, because this wasn't just about two executives making personal mistakes. It was about a company failing at the highest level of governance. And for Andy, the consequences kept coming. Sources close to him said he was removed from every company Slack channel, his keycard access revoked, and even his professional mentor had publicly unfollowed him. And then came the quiet bombshell reports surfaced that his own mother had removed him as her emergency contact, replaced by his younger brother. And though it seemed small, it was the kind of detail the internet ate up, a symbolic gesture that even family ties had limits, especially when disgrace came knocking. And as the memes slowed and the timeline threads faded, a new chapter was beginning, one of accountability, legal reckoning, and corporate repair. Kristen Kitt remained in hiding, her whereabouts still unknown, but she was expected to testify in upcoming depositions, and speculation swirled that she had retained her own legal team separate from Andy, signaling that any united front had completely shattered. And Astronomer, the once celebrated people first unicorn, was now a brand associated with betrayal, mismanagement, and scandal. Its homepage had been updated again, stripped of color and flair, replaced with a single line, a message that read, "We are listening and we are learning." But many questioned if that would ever be enough, because the trust once lost is rarely rebuilt. And the tech world watched closely, every founder, every investor, every employee now hyper-aware that no amount of vision statements or leadership threads could save a company from the rot within. And while Megan Byron stayed silent, her moves were louder than words. She filed paperwork to launch a foundation dedicated to ethical leadership in startups, quietly secured funding for a new wellness venture, and was spotted attending an event with a high-profile media strategist known for helping women navigate high-stakes public crises. The message was clear. She wasn't hiding, she was rebuilding on her own terms, and with every step she reminded the world that dignity and strategy were not mutually exclusive. They were a power combination. And as for Andy Byron, he remained in the same house, friends say, curtains drawn, blinds shut, lights off, barely speaking, barely eating, and still muttering the same phrase, one mistake. One mistake ruined everything. And maybe that's true. But what he never seemed to understand is that the mistake wasn't the kiss or the concert. It was the arrogance, the entitlement, the belief that he could blur the lines between personal and professional without consequences. And in a world where every phone is a camera, every receipt is a screenshot, and every lie can be unraveled by a Google Doc, that arrogance cost him everything. His marriage, his family, his reputation, his company, and his legacy. And as the final videos circulated and the internet slowly moved on to the next scandal, the story of Andy Byron, Kristen Kitt, and the Coldplay kiss. Cam remained a digital monument to hubris, a modern myth about power and how easily it crumbles. And in its shadow, Megan Byron walked away without a single quote, without a single headline, just a new name, a new future, and a silence that echoed louder than any scandal could ever hope to scream. It started with a kiss. Cam, a Coldplay concert, 60,000 people swaying in unison, lights flashing, phones recording, and the familiar hum of Fix You echoing across the stadium. And right there in the middle of it all, the camera zoomed in on a couple sitting front row in the VIP section, a man and a woman laughing cozy. She reaches up, runs her fingers through his hair, and the crowd cheers. Just another cute moment until someone recognizes the man, and suddenly the cheers turn into whispers. Because that man is Andy Byron, the CEO of Astronomer, a billion-dollar Silicon Valley tech company. And the woman smiling beside him is not his wife Megan, but Kristen Kitt, the head of human resources at his company. The woman literally responsible for preventing workplace affairs like the one unfolding in real time in front of tens of thousands of people. And just like that, What could have been a harmless concert clip turned into a scandal that would shake the foundations of a tech empire and trigger a corporate and personal collapse, unlike anything the internet had ever seen. Within minutes, phones were up, videos were rolling, and the footage began spreading like wildfire on TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram. The kiss cam moment slowed, down analyzed from multiple angles, zoomed in color, corrected captioned with text overlays, and soundtracked to Coldplay memes exploded Andy mid-smirk, Kristen stroking his hair. Their names plastered across screenshots the internet had seen cheating scandals before, but not like this. This was cheating on the company's dime in front of a live audience while your wife and kids watched from home via live stream, and the woman you're having an affair with is your company's HR chief. It was too much. Too cinematic, too perfect a storm to ignore by midnight. The clip had gone viral with millions of views, and within hours, amateur investigators were on the case digging into everything. The seat numbers, the VIP credentials, even the bracelet Kristen was wearing that matched one seen in a vacation photo from weeks prior, and then came the receipts company credit card charges for the VIP tickets, a St. Regis hotel booking for 2 nights, 2 guests' Uber rides from separate addresses converging. At the same hotel, everything adding up to a perfectly documented paper trail of an affair funded by company money. And that is when public curiosity turned to public outrage, not just because of the infidelity, but because of the corporate fraud, the betrayal of employees and investors, and the sheer arrogance of thinking they could get away with it in plain sight. Andy Byron wasn't just a CEO. He was the guy who tweeted about leadership, empathy, and values. The guy quoted in LinkedIn threads. The man who spoke at conferences about building ethical organizations. And here he was wrapped up in a romance that broke every rule he claimed to stand for. And Kristen Kitt wasn't just a fling. She was the top HR executive, the one whose name was on every policy designed to prevent exactly this kind of scandal. And as people began to dig deeper, the story got darker. Allegations surfaced about her using her position to approve promotions for Andy's friends, skip performance reviews, and sidestep accountability over $2 million in questionable HR decisions under her name. And suddenly, this wasn't just about a kiss cam. This was about a culture of corruption and cover-ups inside a company that prided itself on transparency and integrity. Slack messages leaked, former employees spoke out, Reddit threads detailed a timeline that read like a Netflix script, and the anger only grew when Kristen's LinkedIn profile vanished overnight, deleted in panic, along with 8 years of work history, 15,000 connections, and every polished line of her digital reputation. But of course, the internet never forgets. Screenshots and archives preserved it all, and the deeper people went, the more they found, like the fact that the company had quietly taken down its people-first mission statement from the website, and how the stock began to dip as investors grew uneasy and clients started asking questions. Meanwhile, inside Astronomer employees were reeling not just from the scandal, but from what it revealed about the leadership they had trusted. Emails, Slack messages, and internal documents began to surface, hinting at a pattern of favoritism, ethics violations, and a growing sense that the company had become the personal playground of 2 executives blinded by power and protected by their titles. And all the while, the person at the center of the storm, Andy's wife, Byron, said absolutely nothing. No Instagram stories, no public statements, no interviews, no cryptic quotes. Just silence. And in that silence, the internet saw strength. Because Byron wasn't just a wife, scorned. She was a woman with a plan. And as we would soon learn, she had been preparing for this moment for months, as the internet erupted with jokes, memes, slow-mo edits, and hot takes. Byron quietly slipped offline, but not without making her move first. She changed her name on every platform from Byron to Meg Carrion, a subtle shift that signaled something deeper. She unfollowed Andy, deleted photos from the past 2 years, archived their vacation highlights, and wiped their wedding anniversary post off the grid. And then with precision, she deactivated her Instagram completely, like she had never been part of his narrative at all. The silence, the rebrand, the complete erasure. It was chilling and poetic, and the internet noticed. Hard Twitter exploded with applause, calling her Queen Energy Revenge Royalty, the Silent Slayer. But what the public didn't know yet was that this wasn't reaction. This was strategy, because behind the scenes, Megan had already known about the affair months before the kiss. She had quietly hired a private investigator back in October. Someone discreet, efficient, thorough, and over the next several months, she collected everything: surveillance photos, financial records, phone logs, a trail so detailed it made the internet investigation look amateur. And while Andy was planning concert dates and luxury hotels with Kristen Kitt, Megan was compiling timelines, handing evidence to her legal team, and preparing for what was coming. Because this wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about betrayal at every level. As a wife, a mother, and a former executive, she understood the stakes. And now she was going to make them pay. According to insiders close to her, Meghan wasn't out for vengeance. She was out for accountability. Not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever watched a man destroy a legacy with ego and entitlement. She wasn't posting quotes about healing. She was preparing the most expensive divorce in Silicon Valley history, and she wasn't alone. Her legal team was fierce elite lawyers with experience in corporate misconduct, federal cases, and high-profile settlements. And they weren't just looking at infidelity. They were looking at fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, misuse of company funds, and possible violations of employment law. Because when Kristen Kitt used her HR power to fast-track promotions for Andy's friends and expense their romantic getaways, it wasn't just unethical, it could be illegal. Andy Byron might have thought this would blow over a few headlines, a couple of awkward board meetings. But what he didn't see coming was Meghan, already 3 steps ahead, locking in financial experts, digital forensics, subpoenaing emails, Slack messages, hotel bills, and browser histories. They wanted everything not to humiliate, but to expose the full extent of what happened to lay bare. How? 2 top executives abused their roles to indulge in a relationship at the expense of everyone else, investors, employees, their children, and yes, even the public who had bought into their perfect image because Andy and Meghan weren't just a couple. They were a brand featured in magazine spreads, fundraisers, podcasts. She was the mompreneur, the wellness app founder, the heart of the family image. While he played the visionary CEO together, they sold a dream the algorithm loved. And now that dream was shattered, and in its place was a cautionary tale unraveling in real time. Meanwhile, Andy Byron wasn't handling the fallout. Well, sources say he had gone into lockdown, avoiding calls, refusing interviews. Even his closest friends couldn't get through. And when he did speak, it was just one phrase over and over again. One mistake. One mistake ruined everything. But it wasn't one mistake. And it wasn't just a kiss. It was a series of deliberate choices. Bad decisions, arrogance, and worst. Of all the belief that power and position made him untouchable. And as for Kristen Kitt, she had gone completely dark. Her neighbors reported seeing her leave her house late at night, duffel bag in hand, and a car with tinted windows waiting at the curb. Some speculated she was staying with family. Others thought she left the country altogether. Her LinkedIn was gone, her phone disconnected, and the HR director who once held the keys to the companies. Most sensitive information had vanished just as she became the most talked about figure in tech and inside astronomer. Things were imploding. Employees were furious, meetings canceled, projects paused. The company's internal Slack reportedly filled with side eyes, sarcastic emojis, and leaked screenshots of conversations hinting that this had been going on far longer than anyone knew, and that Kristen had been using her position not to protect workers, but to serve herself and her inner circle. The board stayed silent, but everyone knew something big was coming, and with every new leak, every new video remix, every angry Reddit thread, the pressure mounted. Because this wasn't just a personal scandal. It was corporate collapse wrapped in viral content and fueled by a digital army demanding accountability.
This video covers legal allegations in a news context. All claims are from official filings and no guilt is implied until proven in court, please. Keep all discussions respectful. Allegations are not facts until proven in court.